The purpose of this review is to make sure that you understand the various elements of the teacher work sample at Mid-American Nazarene University. The first thing I'm going to do is just kind of go over its purpose. If you would like to follow along, you can look at the manual for teacher candidates. However, this entire presentation will actually be scrolling through the manual as we go. So to begin with, you'll find the first two pages giving you an overview of the elements that are within the teacher work sample. And if I had to summarize its purpose, the idea here is that it showcase, the same way you think of a trophy showcase, it's going to showcase your ability as a teacher to analyze your audience, your students, design a unit of learning around their needs, as well as the demands of state standards or district curriculum, to implement that unit of study, make data-driven decisions, all gathered from assessments that you've planned throughout the unit, and then at the end, look at your summative data and make a decision as to how effective your teaching was in that unit. And then at the end, be a reflective practitioner that can look at their work and make suggestions for improvement in the future. So that, again, the TWS showcases your ability to make data-driven decisions that will improve achievement in a unit of study for all students in your classroom. What you see here then is simply a review of that. What I want to do is draw your attention then to page 3 here, which gives you an overview of each of the 7 sections. So the idea is that any teacher who's going into a classroom new to plan a unit of study should go through these 7 steps. The first one is a contextual analysis, where you really stop and you examine the broader community in which your school is placed, the school district, the school itself, and then the classroom in which you're teaching. And you look at the variables and the types of students you have and other elements that are going to impact your learning. You analyze those, and then you talk about the ones that are going to be most impactful. We'll go over more details of this in a second. And then in section 2, this is where you outline what you want students to know or be able to do. And you're doing this based on state standards or district curriculum expectations. The third section then, once you know your audience in section 1, section 2, you know what you want them to know and be able to do. Section 3 is in essence where you decide, how am I going to know if they got it? And so you're trying to not only determine your end test at the very end to determine if they met your objectives, but you're also reviewing, to begin with, a pretest. That pretest will tell you what they already know in your unit and will help to dictate what that unit contains. And then as you teach, you have a series of these formal and informal formative assessments, which we call assessment for learning. Those are sprinkled throughout the unit in each lesson, and the results of those assessments for learning should change the teaching for the coming day. And the results should be shared with students. At the end of the unit, there should be no surprises as to their achievement then in their assessment of learning, which is a summative assessment. So once you create that plan in section 3, section 4 then is how are you going to get them there. You know your audience, you know what you want them to know and be able to do, that's in section 2. You know how you're going to assess them, the plan is in section 3. Section 4 then is your actual design for instruction, the methods you're going to use to get your kids to your ultimate goal. Sections 1 through 4 are your plan. It's what you think you're going to do. The plan should be made well in advance of executing the unit, especially for a novice teacher. The pre-test should be given before you design your instruction in section 4. And we'll go over that in a second as well. So 1 through 4 is the plan. Section 5 is literally almost like a journal of what's happening at the time of teaching. And it's here where you're kind of keeping track of instructional decisions that you made on the fly. We don't want to know that you did exactly what you planned to do in sections 1 through 3, but instead, 1 through 4, but instead what we want is in section 5 for you to tell us what you changed and why, and maybe even be able to tell us the outcome of that. So again, we'll go over these in detail in just a little bit. Section 6 is then where you tell us, this is my data. These are the results of that assessment plan. And you just basically, 1, present the data to us, but secondly, you interpret it. And you talk about how this data might lead you to certain conclusions. It's what we would call kind of a prescript where if you go to a doctor and you tell them what your ailments are, that doctor's job is to listen to you and then basically come up with a kind of diagnosis on the impact that whatever these symptoms are having on your body, and this is what I diagnose you to have. Section 6 is like that. You're giving us all the data, the experiences that your kids had in your classroom, and then you're drawing a conclusion about that, and you're saying, in the end, I diagnosed my students and they met my outcomes. Section 7 is where you then go a step further, because chances are there's going to be things in your unit that you want to do to be better, and hopefully some data you gathered from Section 6 pushes you in that direction. So 7 is all about where you show us how to be a reflective practitioner, that you know how to analyze and think about your teaching and your own learning, and then you can establish future goals for yourself based on what you discovered about yourself as a teacher within the entire TWS process. As you then go into the coming pages, and you can see here this goes into page 4, you're going to go through a series of just tidbits like general advice, but also what are the big pitfalls? What do most people miss within the TWS? So what you need to do is just read this. It gives you examples of, making sure you read through all these materials right now. It helps you to understand the whole concept of the pre and the post test. It's almost like little reminders based on everything that you've been learning so far. I wouldn't worry about the schedule because we've embedded your rough drafts into our syllabus, into our seminar due dates, so there's no reason for us to review that. So the reminders for submission, this is in essence reviewing with you APA format, what's expected to be on your cover page. It tells you about the table of contents, how we want you to identify your graphs and charts and attachments. It does give you a basic guideline that we don't want the TWS to exceed 20 computer-generated pages. Keep in mind that we do understand that there might be exceptions to that. This is just kind of a general goal. There is, a gift basically to be able to be succinct in your writing, and we want you to strive for that. But in the end, we're more concerned about you being able to convey a message to us about you as a teacher and your effectiveness. So let's just focus on that for now. In addition to that, it does talk about how anything that you use as a reference, so if you're gathering even data about your school or your classroom based on, let's say, an interview with a principal, even that should be cited following APA styling. Right here is the online writing lab called the OWL. It's Purdue University that provides it, and they'll even tell you how you cite within your narrative as well as within your bibliography if you're getting it from a website, if you're getting it from a state report, if you're getting it from an interview with a principal. It will tell you how to do all of that, so be sure to use that as a reference. And then finally, it just emphasizes the fact that we shouldn't know who you are, where your school is, or anything else. So we talk about you referring to yourself in third person. You refer to yourself as a teacher candidate. You might label your kids' names A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, wherever they fall on your roster, anything like that to help us maintain anonymity. And the idea here is that when we grade your TWS, the more likely that we don't know who you are, the more likely that we'll have a cleaner grading process without biases ever entering into it. So make sure that on your file name, you also do not put your name, because sometimes we'll get people, the entire document will be anonymous, but the file name that they upload to TaskStream and Moodle will have their name in it. So it's better to have your MNU ID number in your file name than your actual personal name. So just let us know if you have questions about that as well. As you go in, then we start getting into the rest of the manual focuses on each individual section. The purpose of what I've shared with you so far is just to tell you the purpose of the TWS and to give you an overall understanding. What we'll provide for you next will be additional recordings that will go over each individual section.